Greetings, folks. This is Marcus from Your Move Games, and tonight we're going to discuss the 3 different modes of ranged attacks in Battleground. So if you take your handy-dandy little rulebook and open to page 91, you'll see indirect fire attacks here on the bottom of page 91, and then carrying over to page 92, you have line-of-sight attacks and low arc attacks, and those are the 3 types of ranged attacks in Battleground. So we'll start with indirect fire. Indirect fire attacks are the most common form of range attack in Battleground, and it's usually it actually is the default mode of fire. Archers, all archers are indirect fire. They're an example of indirect fire units. What that means is they can fire over their own units onto an enemy unit. So even though these High Elven archers are behind the High Elven swordsmen, they can still fire at the terracotta crossbowmen here because A, they are in range, they are within 14 inches. B, they can see a center point. As long as you can see a center point, you can fire. And C, there's no terrain, like line of sight blocking terrain that is blocking them so that they can't fire on them. So regardless of whether they're engaged or not, these guys can fire. So in this case, the archers, this is a legal target. And even if the High Elven swordsmen are engaged with the terracotta crossbowmen, the crossbowmen are still a legal target. Basically, the archers aim high and they shoot over their own guys into the enemy unit. Now, the exception is you cannot fire over an enemy unit at another enemy unit. So whether the crossbowmen are engaged with the swordsman or not, the terracotta guardians hiding back there so bravely behind the crossbowmen are not a legal target because they cannot see a center point and they cannot fire over an enemy unit. All right, so now we're going to move to the second mode of range attacks, which is line of sight attacks. Crossbowmen, any kind of crossbow unit, and javelins are a line of sight attack. Basically, the projectiles travel very low to the ground, so they can't shoot over stuff. So in order to be able to fire at a unit with a line of sight unit, like these crossbowmen right here, and it will say it on the card, see that right there, line of sight? You must, A, be within range of the enemy unit, and B, be able to see a center point of an enemy unit. Now, you cannot fire over an enemy unit, just like with indirect fire, but you can't fire over your own units either. So in this example, let's say the terracotta guardians are engaging the swordsman. These crossbowmen can no longer fire on the swordsman because they cannot fire over their own units. In this case, they can because they can see a center point clearly. There's one other thing that you need in order to successfully make a ranged attack with indirect fire is you need an open path, just like in Final Rushing. So you need at least 2.5 inches of clearance. What that means is that, in this case right here, you see the High Elf archers. Well, the terracotta crossbowmen, even though they can see the archers, they can draw a line from center point to center point. They need at least 1.5 inches of clearance, which they don't have, right? So they can't fire. This is not a legal target. Now, if there was 2.5 inches separating these units right here, then now it does become a legal target. Now they can fire. But basically, low arc is, line of sight attacks is basically you have to see it to be able to shoot it. It's a pretty simple rule of thumb. So now we're going to move on to our final style of attack, which is low arc attacks. Low arc attacks are actually very rare in Battleground. Currently, the High Elf Scorpions and the Dwarven Ballista are the only 2 units that have a low arc attack. The Wuxing Rocket Arrow Battery, it's like a low arc attack, but it's its own special rule. It's its own thing. So for low arc attacks, just like indirect attacks, you can fire over your own units. So the High Elf Scorpions right here are capable of hitting the terracotta crossbowmen. And just like with here, they can't shoot over an enemy unit. So there's an enemy unit blocking it. Just like any other indirect fire line of sight by that, they cannot fire at the terracotta guardians in this case. But they can fire at them. However, once they become engaged, they can no longer fire because they travel on a low arc and you don't want to, knock those gigantic bolts through the backs of the skulls of your allied troops. So you can't fire on an engaged unit. Even if it's engaged like this, they just are not able to fire on an engaged unit. There is an exception. Say your unit is engaged with a large unit. The enemy unit is a large or colossal unit. In this case, then a low arc weapon can fire at the enemy unit. The thing is just so big that they're able to shoot over the heads of your allies at the target. So in this case, the Scorpions can fire on the Jade Dragon. By the way, it's a dragon of summer because it's summertime. So this is allowable. However, if it's a case like this, then the High Elf Scorpions are going to have to fire at somebody else. Maybe they have another target over here that they can shoot at. So that's it. Those are the three different types of range fire in Battleground. We have indirect fire attacks, we have line of sight attacks, and low arc attacks. And hope this was helpful to you all. All right, have a great night.